Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. My name is David Baer, and today I am so pleased to welcome back to the show Liz Wilcox. Liz, I got a question for you. Are you ready for this one?
Yes.
All right. So I know we're going to be talking about email like we did on the last call, but before we do, I wonder, what is the name of the band? You know where this is going, don't you?
I mean, it's going somewhere.
That was also known as Skin Disease, Antidote, Scab Aid, and this might help you. Their number one hit was Tub Thumping.
Oh, Chumbawamba.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. You know what?
Yeah.
If you didn't listen to the first episode with David and I, go back, listen to it. It's called like 90s pop culture, or it's like the one about email in 90s or something. It was published in June of 2022, but we talk a lot about the 90s. And I just want to say, I'm so glad you asked me that question, because Chumbawamba was the first CD I bought with my own money. I was 10 and it died tragically when my brother took it out of the CD player and like frisbeed it. And we had French doors in our house, and it hit the French door. Like one was open, one was closed, and it literally just split in half. And that was the end of Chumbawamba in my household, and probably the end of them anyway.
Well, no, I think they lasted until 2012, according to Wikipedia, but that really was the only hit they ever had, I think.
Yeah, they got knocked down. They didn't really come back up again, did they?
By the way, that story, there are some people who write emails with stories like that. Like, that's a great email story.
Yeah, it's a good lesson. We'll be singing, we'll be ringing. Is that the lyric? Could be the preview text, or the subject line. I get knocked down, preview text, but I get up again. I'm opening that. Are you?
I would be opening it, and then I would read this fascinating story about the
night away.
Well, no, like the CD getting smashed. You have to explain what CDs are to some of the readers, right? But also, there's a lesson that you can, this is the type of email that I like to write. And we're way off topic, by the way, because we're going to talk about metrics in a moment. But this
Stick with us, folks.
This is the kind of email that I like to write, which is a little bit of entertaining story, and then segue somehow into a lesson or an offer or a call to action. And I love like that little story about, it could be a story about conflict between you and a sibling, and it could be a story about how you don't mourn the loss of something, and you can always replace it, or and turn it into here's what to do next, or here's why I brought this up, right? And then there's a little call to action.
Yeah, I love how we're just riffing on an email here. So maybe I would say the thing about my brother, it's splitting in half. And then maybe the lesson is, learning to let go of what once was.
Yeah. And then you got to figure out, well, what do I want the reader to do next, right? Based on consuming this. So buy
my $5,000 course, of course.
Right.
Get on a sales call.
Totally. So this is actually, I think, an appropriate segue to the conversation that I want to have with you today, which is about understanding the things that, as a sender of emails, are important to be aware of metrics wise. So the numbers that you're looking at, the statistics that you're looking at, to know, am I doing a good job? Am I doing a bad job? When I'm sending out emails, are they effective? Are they not? What do I need to look at in order to inform what I need to change? And so I wonder if you can sort of give us a little intro into this topic and your perspective on this whole concept of being guided by numbers and being informed as a user of email about how you're doing and how you're not.
Yeah, so I love metrics. I love data. I love running my numbers. It wasn't until I really understood my numbers that I felt like, okay, I have a true business that I can move forward because I'm basing it on, data and facts and not just my gut. Like, oh, that's a shiny object, or I heard that podcast, I'm going to try that out, right? It was, really knowing what mattered to me, what my bottom line is, and usually I have a different kind of bucket every single year. Like, okay, I want to drive this forward. I want to drive that forward. And then, looking at the numbers related to that. But if you're like, if you're listening to this while driving, like, don't write this down, but like, here's a little ding ding moment. I want you to understand, like, you can't actually access every piece of data, and that's okay. You can still look at data and different metrics as a big picture to drive you. But I mentioned that because there's this little thing called MPP that Apple came out with, the Mail Privacy Protection or Protection Privacy Act. I always get the two P's mixed up, and it's made open rates not completely dead, but they're maybe half asleep. They're slightly inflated depending on what kind of audience you have. And right now, if you Google it, most people are kind of spouting like, oh, it's dead, it's dead, go to click rate, go to click rate. But click rates,
So,
open
so
rates,
just to
all.
clarify what you're
Go ahead.
saying, because I want to make sure I understand. It's not that people are opening the emails less, but that the data that's being reported is not as accurate. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so
Okay.
MPP, if you don't know about it, it basically stops senders, me and David, you, from using, let's say, like invisible pixels to collect info about the subscriber. So basically, MPP blocks if I'm using Apple Mail, and this is Apple Mail only, and I could have a Gmail account, but if I'm opening it up in Apple Mail specifically, like that app, Apple will block me from seeing any open data. So it will automatically tell if I'm sending an email to, or David sending me an email, it will automatically tell David that I've opened it. So the rates are actually inflated. Even if I haven't opened it yet, it just auto sends that data to you. So you might see this if you send out an email and within 3 minutes you've got a 10% open rate. Likely you probably only have a 3% open rate, and the rest of those are Apple auto opens. But I mentioned that to say, like, I mentioned the realizing you can't access every piece of data. You couldn't before this MPP thing, right? Like click rates, open rates, all these things, they're mostly accurate, but sometimes, technology isn't perfect. And so things are, always skewed a little bit anyway. So I don't want you to obsess about it, but you can still use open rates and these other metrics that we're going to talk about to get a big picture, and always keeping in mind your bottom line. And David and I, before we hit record, we were talking about sales. Sales is the bottom line here. For me, it's specifically number of customers. And so that's the metric that I'm always tracking. And I'm looking at all these other ones to help me move that one number. I hope that makes sense.
So let me try to repeat what you just said.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Ultimately, what we want is we have a specific goal with our emails. And in the case that you were describing, it's to make sales. It might be in somebody else's situation to sign people up for an event, or to get people to download something. But whatever the goal is ultimately the most important metric.
Yes, and that can vary, email to email, quarter to quarter, year after year. If the business shifts from one direction to the next, that bottom line, that goal that David was talking about can shift, and often does. Some emails, your call to action might just be, hit reply. There's nothing in your email service provider that tracks how many people reply, right? That's something you're going to have to do on your own. But in general, always keeping in mind, like, okay, I'm trying to up my number of customers, or I'm just trying to make more sales, which can be different, right? Or to David's point, like, I've got to get as many people to this event as possible, or, into this Facebook group, and that's where the sales are happening. Whatever, just knowing what the ultimate goal of your email marketing is going to help you understand what metrics to track. And if you are an email marketer for a larger company, what metrics to show your boss or the superior in that.
So do you want to walk through some of the metrics that are often tracked or are often discussed, and sort of talk about the level of value that you perceive on each of them?
Yeah, sure. So of course, we can talk real quick about open rates. That used to be the holy grail, open rate. And I'm guilty of it. I have a whole workshop called Open Sesame on how to get your open rates up, right? And that was basically, the real gold standard of things. But also click rates. Click rate is another really helpful metric that you can see how many people are engaged. And usually, no matter what your service provider is, your email service provider, whether you're using Keep, Klaviyo is a good one for e-commerce, MailChimp, anything like that. The click rate is usually they send it out to the email, and it's how many people out of your whole list clicked. So not just the people that opened, but out of your whole list that clicked. So if you send out the email, you have a 13% click rate. That's 13% of your entire list clicked. So that's an important distinction. And that can be really, really helpful. We want people to click, especially if our main goal is to, drive traffic to our site or to drive traffic to the sales page. We want to kind of train our people to click on emails, even if it's not, a sales email, even if it's just, a small landing page, or to get them over to the Facebook, or, whatever it is that day. If you can get that click rate up, they're much more likely to, click on the sales page when you present it, right? Some other ones that are kind of overlooked, but I think the most important are they help you with the health of your email list. So checking for deliverability. Did my email even make it to David's inbox, right? And checking for, and there are, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, but there are specific things you can Google, just deliverability test. And there are places where you can test your deliverability. Don't become obsessed with it, but you definitely want to put it on your calendar once a year to see, if it's maintaining, if it's doing well for you. If you find that your other metrics are going kind of crazy, you're wondering, why is my open rate tanking? Why isn't anyone clicking? Maybe that's a good time to check your deliverability rate as well. But that's something I don't often hear people talking about, but it is important. We want to make sure your emails are actually getting sent out. Now that is different also from getting into the inbox. That's a different metric. And you want to check that as well. And you can do that really simply by, opting in with a different email address and seeing if you go into spam or promotions or the inbox, right? And I want to say something here too about that. This is a little side note. The promotions folder in Gmail is not the junk folder. It's not the spam folder. If you are promoting something, which you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously a marketer in some sort of way. Promotions, if you land in promotions, Gmail, Google is actually doing its job properly, and it's doing what it was designed to do. So don't look at that as a bad metric. Of course, we want to get into the inbox, but if you land in promotions, just know that is not the spam folder. So, just keep that in your side pocket.
So I want to complicate things just a moment
Please
longer, because you were talking about deliverability, and I think it's probably useful to talk briefly about DKIM, DMARC, SPF, all of that stuff, just so that people understand that they do have potentially some control over improving their situation on deliverability if they're struggling with it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And there's a lot when you do a deliverability test, some of them will tell you like, hey, this space over here is marking you as, a big fat no. And there are ways that you can even work with, if you don't know what the heck we're talking about, and these are complicated things, you can work directly with most email service providers to say, hey, what is this? And maybe put that in the show notes, all that DCAM, all that stuff. So you know what to ask your email service provider, and they're going to give you the resources needed to get that deliverability up, because it's like building a wall. You do it brick by brick. And if the bottom is not good, we've all played Jenga, right? If the bottom's going to fall out, everything's going to topple over. So that's why I recommend definitely checking on that email deliverability, all those things David said, and working, if you don't know where to start, just start with your email service provider, send them a customer support. My deliverability is terrible. Where do I go from here? They are number one. They want you to succeed. They want you to keep emailing. That's how they make money. So they're definitely going to help you out with all that complicated stuff.
And I imagine that their reputation as the sending entity is probably improved by you doing things properly. I'm guessing. I don't know.
Yes, 100%. And they have dedicated servers. I mean, in general, there are certain service providers, if they're newer, if they themselves don't have a good sender reputation or good server reputation, it could be affected, but they will love to work with you, because that's going to up their server reputation in the interwebs as well. I like to think of them. I like to think there's internet gods out there, and everybody's just trying to please them. So if you work together, it's going to be great.
All right, you were starting to talk about some other metrics, and then you sidetracked on deliverability. Do you want to go back to some of the other things that you had on your list?
Yeah, I do. And I'm going to pull this up. If you're not watching on YouTube, get over there, because I've got some awesome slides. So what you also want to track is list growth, the rate at which your list is growing. And you can do that versus your unsubscribes. So unsubscribes are not bad. They actually keep your list really healthy, and they're going to make those other things, those other metrics that actually drive sales or drive that big objective even better. So you want people to fall off that don't want to be on the email list, right? How many times have you gone out to your actual mailbox and you're like, oh my gosh, John moved 10 years ago. Why am I still getting this mail? It goes directly into the trash, right? And so you don't want your email to be that email, like, oh my gosh, why do they keep sending this to me? So unsubscribes are actually really good. That could be a whole nother episode. We won't go. I know it's a mental thing. I know it's hard. You work hard for your leads, but I promise, don't feel bad about them. But the list growth is really, really where it's at. You want to keep it healthy. You want to keep it churning. Think of it like, what's that word? Stagnant water. You don't want your list to be stagnant. Have you ever smelled stagnant water? It's terrible. There's a reason why the ocean has waves. Thank you, moon, right? It keeps the water flowing. You want your list to be that too. So I would recommend tracking your list growth month to month and making sure, it's actually growing, tracking those unsubscribes, every few months, making sure some people are falling off, but not too many, that your list isn't growing.
Can I ask, before you move on to some of these others, I have a question related to these two items. There are you can also see who hasn't not opened for a period of time. And I've gotten advice about purging those people from your list at certain intervals, that there's a benefit to doing that. Do you have thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that. In the words of TLC, another 90s group, we don't want no scrubs, right? We don't want people that are just on the email list. We're sending them over and over and over again. They're usually called cold subscribers, dead subscribers, something like that. And depending on what kind of business that you have, you want to scrub your list. You want to get rid of that dead weight. I would recommend at least once a year. If your list growth is doing really well, then I would recommend even more so. And you might be thinking, well, with the open rates thing, like, can I really scrub my list nowadays? Is it really accurate? Remember, the open rates nowadays are actually inflated. So anyone on that cold scrub list is actually not opening, right? And so you still want to scrub. I honestly do it 3 or 4 times a year, but my list is growing really, really quickly. There are some, especially if you're in retail or e-commerce, they might have, they call it a look back window of about 12 months. You know, you can send out during Black Friday or a huge sale, you might pull some of those cold subscribers back in over a year if you're doing a really big sale. But in general, I say, you know, you can do a cold scrub sequence, which is trying to re-engage them. You know, okay, I've got 100 people that haven't opened in the last 90 days. I'm going to send a couple emails right in a row, try to re-engage them, try to get them to click and say they want to be on the list. And if they don't, then I'm going to remove them from the list entirely. So what I do is I pull a CSV file. That way I still have them if I want to run ads later, or maybe, you know, that look back window, I want to have a big Black Friday sale, and maybe they'll be interested. I pull that file. So I have those emails still, but I get them out of my email service provider. Number one, it just makes it easier to not forget to not email them. Number two, I'm paying per subscriber. A lot of ESPs, you know, once you hit, you know, oh, at 100, you pay this many. At 1,000, you pay this much. At 10,000, you pay this. So getting them off of your ESP is just going to be less expensive for you.
And
it helps
I've
deliverability.
I've even seen what you are describing in terms of like the whatever the frequency is. I think I've set mine
Mhm.
to every 90 days to
Mhm.
scrub. That's an automation that you can set up. So what you were
Yep.
just talking about in terms of like trying to re-engage them, and then if they don't re-engage, then purge them. Some platforms give you the ability to just set that up once and then it'll run automatically.
Yeah, so I am email obsessed, so I don't do that, but you can do that if that's easier for you. If you just want to set it and forget it, I highly recommend that. For me, someone who is kind of obsessed with email metrics, I'm doing a cold scrub right now actually, and I'm going through and I'm spending time. Of course, this is my full-time job. That's email, right? It's my job to do this. So I go through and I see, okay, this cold subscriber, when did they stop opening the emails on average? And I'll look at a sample of maybe 20, 30, you know, depending on how much time, you know, I might even go up to 100 over the different pages. And I'll see, oh, you know, these people came in from this event. And wow, a lot of them just didn't even open up one single email. Or I'll see, oh, this person purchased this, and after 3 months, they just stopped opening emails. So that can be an important metric. Of course, it's my job to be that detailed. You know, it might not be your job to do that. So automation, if you're someone who's just like, I just want to get the basics, I can add on later, definitely automate it, like David said.
All right. I'm not going to interrupt you. You have more
Please do. This is
things.
awesome. This is awesome. Yeah, and then the other couple of things that you can track, and again, this is all for the health of your list. This all honestly affects your deliverability, affects all that stuff David was talking about, affects the internet gods to say like, yeah, Liz is awesome, or boo, hiss, put her in spam, right? Or don't deliver that at all. It's obviously garbage. Are complaints and bounce rates. So a complaint is when someone unsubscribes, and we all know, and it's like, please tell us why you don't want to receive these emails. And someone says, because I never signed up for this, or it's irrelevant, or whatever. If they check a box, it's like, oh, I never signed up for this. This isn't what I expected. Something like that. That is a complaint. And it's kind of like a traffic ticket, right? You don't want to get too many tickets. You're going to lose your license, right? That's what that is. And bounce rates are when you send an email and it bounces back. It's not delivered to that inbox. So it's like if I sent David an actual piece of mail and I wrote the address wrong and it got returned to sender, basically is what that bounce rate is. And you don't want too many of those because that signals, again, to the internet gods that you have a lot of spam accounts in your service provider. So you're likely not doing good business, and that can affect your deliverability as well.
Okay. I'm thinking you said something about, when you go through the numbers and you're doing it manually, you've noticed that maybe it's people who came in onto your list from a certain point. You said an event or something like that. And I think there's a lot of different ways that we list build. It might be that it's all through, your website, and there's a pop-up, or there's you know, a opt-in box to get a coupon, get a free something, whatever the mechanism is that you're using. But then there's a lot of sort of collaborative ways that people build their
Yeah.
list as well. So I've done a lot of summits where I've spoken, for example, and I get people on my list because I'm the host of the summit, or I'm a guest on the summit, etc. And then I go back and look at that and I go, oh gosh, these people really aren't interested in me at all. They haven't opened a damn thing I've sent out since. And so it's,
And it hurts, and
yeah.
it hurts.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the point is ultimately, like, are we effective at selling the thing that we're aiming to sell? And there's a bunch of this stuff that you have to put up with along the way, I assume, which is not necessarily, converting into a sale.
Right. Yeah. And it all goes back to what we said at the beginning, I think, of know what your actual goal is. If your goal is to build a giant list, then does it matter that anybody opens? Maybe not. Maybe you are just building a giant list so you can show that to potential sponsors. Hopefully, sponsors, listen up, ask questions about other metrics. But you know what I mean? It really goes down to, like, what is my actual goal with my email list? And so, like David was saying, I also do a lot of collaborative events, and I've just realized, podcasts, like, obviously this is my second time on this podcast. I do a lot of interviews, and I know those leads are really, really good. They tend to convert faster, they stay on the list longer. If I'm in your ears for 30 minutes, if you're, stopping, pulling over the car, or remembering later, whatever you're doing right now, you remember later to get on the email list, like, you're actually interested. It might not be the bigger number, but it's the more engaged number. Whereas earlier, or late 2021, I participated in a couple bundles, and that's where, everybody pitches in a paid product, like, oh yeah, I'm going to put this, I'm going to put that. And basically someone hosts it on a landing page, and it's a free for all. It's like, it's like a Vegas buffet. Like, you just go in and get what you want, get out. Right. And so my list grew really quickly. I think I got like 1,000 subscribers in a few days from one bundle. And I noticed those leads, I guess, sorry to say, they were crap. No, people didn't really open. Maybe they opened and unsubscribed pretty quickly, or they just let it die. I saw a lot of emails that were, just this bundle at gmail.com. It was obviously a separate inbox. And I made the decision a few months later, after doing a couple of those, that I was just going to say no to any bundles. And so this year, I feel like 2022 is the year of the bundle. And so I'm getting invited to a lot of them. And I've said no to every single one of them, because I just realized it's going to, affect my deliverability, that bounce rate. It's making that list growth go up like crazy. But because I'm looking at this from a much larger perspective and with that goal in mind, I know that's not really the direction I want to go, and I can make that good business decision for myself.
Yeah, that's really useful advice. I've done the bundle thing as well, and I've struggled with that in terms of the interaction that I get with certain types of people based around the context of how they get on the list. And I think it's another thing that we have to think about as business owners or marketers, is the position, the state of mind of the recipient, right? Why did they join the list in the first place? Why are they communicating, or why are they willing to receive stuff from us? What was the starting point? And are we continuing to deliver on whatever that starting point was in our subsequent emails? right? There's all of those things are tied into what you've just been talking about.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like all bundles are bad, right? But I saw great success with bundles in my B2C RV travel blog, because if you're like, especially if you're a content creator with like something super niche like that, where people, oh, I want to know everything I can about X, right? If you're X, then yeah, sure, they might be signed up to 10 lists all at once, but they're super excited. So they're opening all of them. And, the journey is much longer. They might stay on your list for a few months and decide like, okay, yeah, you're the one I'm going to learn from. Or, oh no, I'm going to unsubscribe right away. So it really depends on what your business is. Also whether or not like a certain tactic is going to work for you.
There's a lot more that we can be talking about here, and I know that
There sure is.
we're gonna have apparently another episode on unsubscribes. But I want to kind of wrap things up by talking about some of the tools that you tend to recommend to people when you're helping them identify what's the right piece of software to manage all your email with, and most of them give you the type of information that we've been discussing here. But I'm curious to hear, which email service providers you tend to refer, and if there are any that don't really cover as much of this kind of important data that you would recommend people avoid, I guess is the word.
Yeah. So like David said, most of them will track lots of different metrics for you. Of course, nobody is really tracking that deliverability the way, again, like I said, if you just Google deliverability test. I personally use something called ConvertKit. It's kind of like a made by creators for creators thing, but it's very simple to use. It's relatively inexpensive. I believe they have a free option as well, like a freemium type of subscriber thing now. But what I like about ConvertKit is they also have a pro version where they do have more data, where they will track the number of customers for you, as long as you're integrating whatever your cart is with them. They can actually track that number for you, which is awesome, because that's my number one metric. Like, I just care about number of customers. I know if I can get you in for $9, I'll get you to 1,000 eventually or whatever, right? And I know because I'm paying attention to my list growth, the age of the list, how long somebody stays on the list. I know just getting them in, I'll be good to go, because people tend to stay for over a year on my email list. So of course, some of those things you will have to track manually, like age of list. I don't really know any that track like the average of, and correct me if I'm wrong, like the average age of the subscriber. Do you know any, David?
I'm not sure that I've seen average. I mean, you can drill down into an individual, but I've never seen
that would be a
aggregate.
good, if anybody's listening that has an ESP, that would be a super awesome one, because then you can really know your customer journey, right? And so that's something you can look at yourself. But I also know Keep, formerly known as Infusionsoft, is a really robust ESP. So if you have a lot of products, if you're an agency, even if you're, I already said this, if you have a lot of products, it's really, really good. And if you have a lot of funnels, if you have a lot of complicated email marketing, I really recommend Keep, or Active Campaign is another one that allows you to really have lots of rules, lots of funnels that can talk to each other and then turn each other off, type of thing. ConvertKit, I think, is getting there, but it's just not there yet. It's more simple. In general, just full disclosure, I don't like MailChimp. I know some people who live and die by it. I don't get it, but I would suggest, if you're, rather than listen to me, honestly, set a timer, spend 20 minutes on YouTube, literally over the shoulder videos of reviews of MailChimp, of ConvertKit, Kajabi, Flowdesk, Constant Contact, MailerLite, anything that you can kind of think of that, oh, I might want that one, and just spend a few times. And I recommend YouTube, because you can see it.
Mhm.
And each ESP is set up a little different and works differently depending on your brain, right? Like I don't get MailChimp, but other people are like, oh, it's so simple, right?
You know, I think MailChimp and Constant Contact really came out with a very aggressive, let's get into the small business space. And it's, I agree, most marketers have a poor opinion of MailChimp. It's clunky. Their rules are limited when it comes to a common business model these days, which is affiliate marketing. If you want to promote something, and you're using MailChimp and it's an affiliate link, not your own business that you're promoting, that's against their terms of service.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
What year is it?
And you know, to double down on the whole small business thing, MailChimp, I don't know when this happened, but was purchased last year before, by Intuit, the company that has QuickBooks and TurboTax and stuff.
Yeah,
So
correct.
it's really focused on small local business. I think is really the place where they're trying to excel, and for a lot of other business models, it's not the best tool to use.
Yeah, I think it grew rapidly in the online world, especially because it has a free option,
Yeah.
a pretty good free option compared to other ones.
Yep.
And so people who are trying to start a business, with little to no costs, that was a great option. But nowadays there are some of these others that you can have trials or a certain number of subscribers for free that are better. But yeah, just going to YouTube or blogging, just Googling a couple different features that you think you might want, that you heard me talk about, like, oh yeah, I definitely want to track my number of subscribers, or I need to know how many sales I'm making a week. And just even Googling those and then comparing any that come up, I think is going to be your best bet to figure out what is best for you. And I mean it by just 20 minutes, because we could spend months figuring it out. Any software, just spend, whatever time you think, at least cut it in half and just make the decision. You can switch later if it just doesn't make sense for you, or if you outgrow the service. I know a lot of people that started with ConvertKit are now in Keep or Active Campaign, which is a little more robust, and that is totally fine.
A lot of these platforms have a migration service where they'll actually help you move your list from one to the other, and so that's.
Oh yeah, like insurance agents.
Yeah. All right, Liz Wilcox, this has been a great conversation. I want to make sure that folks who are listening who have not yet jumped onto your email list know how they can join your list and see exactly how you do all of it. So where should they go to learn more and sign up?
Wow, I'm so flattered. Thank you for asking. Yeah, of course. You can just go directly to lizwilcox.com. In the top right-hand corner, you can't miss it. It's a hot pink button. It says free email swipes. When you sign up to my email list, you also get a welcome sequence, 3 newsletter samples, and 52 subject lines completely for free. That's lizwilcox.com, hot pink button. And of course, if you've got any questions, I know this is a semi-complicated, it depends. Email marketers love to say that, it depends. So if you've got a depends type of question, just sign up for the email list, hit reply, ask away. I love anybody that David sends my way, and I'm happy to geek out with you on email. Thank you.
Brilliant. You said this is it depends. We're not talking about adult diapers here.
We're not.
Yes.
We're just email.
Excellent. Liz, thank you so much for joining us again. This has been a great conversation, and look forward to coming up with an excuse to have you back yet again. So
awesome.
Folks, this has been More Perfect Marketing. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. And if you enjoyed the show, please let us know. Leave a review. And if you know somebody who could benefit from listening to this conversation, please send it their way as well. All right, we'll catch you next time. Take care.